Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you in the Rare Items series, where I share all of my cool junk, priceless treasures, I've obtained over the years in the world of Warcraft, and share the story behind them. This is part 2 in the series. If you didn't see part 1 yet, I'll have a link in the description. Something I want to clear up first though, is that one of you out there said how you didn't like I was bragging about my little collection here. Hopefully, that's not the impression I've been giving off. I just wanted to talk about this stuff because I find it interesting, and hopefully the same is true for you guys out there. Has vanilla become the new thing to brag about, how much you played the game when I wasn't looking? If anything, I'm a bit ashamed of how much I played back then. So, hopefully, these videos aren't coming off as bragging, like I don't use it as a pickup line in bars. Like, hey baby, you know the Dark Portal event in Vanilla World of Warcraft? Well, how about we go back to my place and I'll show you just how heroic I am. It works every time. I take her home, get her to my bed, which is next to the computer, I fire up good old World of Warcraft and bam, it's done. So there's some advice for you guys out there. World of Warcraft gets them every time. On a serious note though, I do have a correction before we start. In the first part of this, I talked about those old Librams and how they led to some unique enchants. These actually still drop, I found out, due to people telling me in the comments, so they're not really rare. They're still interesting, I think, especially the ones with the pictures in it, so this still fits the series, but I said that they were rare in the previous part, and that was incorrect, so sorry about that. That was my bad. Anyways, I guess we'll get into it here. Keep in mind that there will be some repeats still from that first Q&A video that I made a long time ago, so if any of this sounds familiar, I'll have some timestamps set up so you can skip around. First up, we have the Light of Elune. This is probably the strongest potion in the game. You used to get just one from an old quest before the Cataclysm expansion, and when you use it, as you can see, you become immune to all damage and spells for 10 seconds with a single use. I've been saving this for like 10 years, just waiting for the right moment to use it. One of these days. Here it is in action. No, I didn't waste this for the video. This is just a PTR character to show you that it really does work, even to this day. To be honest, if it wasn't bound, I'd totally sell it. But until then, it'll continue to collect dust in my bank. Next is, I have some TCG stuff stashed away. I picked all of this up during the Warlords of Draenor expansion at a pretty cheap price to sort of protect myself against inflation. I used to have way more. This is kind of what remains of my stock. I got 2 rooster eggs, one of those nether rockets, a couple of rhinos, and a bunch of the pets. Tuskar kites, the spectral tiger cub, the dark moon rabbit, hippogriff hatchling, rocket chicken, some bananas, and a couple of those ethereal soul traders. These guys are interesting because if you have them out when you kill something, you get these credits and you can use them to buy special items. You can get one of those throwable items to annoy other players, an invisibility detector, some alcohol, a thing that turns your pet into one of those protein horrors from the Burning Crusade, and even an armor set of the generic ethereal clothing, which is cool. If we ever get ethereals as an allied race, this will be like etherealception right here. So, that's my TCG stuff. There's a lot that I don't have, but I got a fair amount I think. Also in my bank, I have some of those old Zul'Gurub coins stashed away. I'm not sure how rare these are, but they're no longer obtainable, so I think they're still pretty interesting. You looted these from the pre-Cataclysm Zul'Gurub, and you turned them in for those old mini armor sets tied to the raid. Then, I think later, they were used for reputation. It's a bit foggy for me. They don't have any real value today other than nostalgia, which is why I kept them. Cool relics of the past. Here's a cool one. The Spectral Essence was a reward from an old vanilla Scholomance dungeon quest. As you know, this dungeon is located on the island of Cardero, hopefully I'm saying that right, in the Western Plaguelands, and it's pretty much a ghost town. No, really. Except you can't actually see the ghosts unless you have this essence. It's actually a trinket, as you can see, and when you equip it, you can see all of the ghostly citizens going about their daily lives as if nothing ever happened, and if you talk to them, you find out that they were preparing for the visit of Uther during the Second War. There's an NPC named Magistrate Marduk near the entrance, who gives you some lore on the Cult of the Damned and how the city fell in ruin. Talking to him used to lead to a quest to kill a lich named Rast Frostwhisper, but that's been removed since the Cataclysm expansion, as you would imagine. There's also someone named Masterson, who's apparently the best baker who's ever lived. Hey, wait a second. This was actually pretty handy though, because we didn't have Tundra Mammoths back then of course, so having a vendor right here to sell your junk was a pretty good thing. There's even a blacksmith that repairs your gear and sells you some exclusive profession patterns. This guy was made visible to everyone though in patch 4.2 since people wanted these patterns, so no trinket is needed for him anymore. And there's also the artist, Renfrey. She was involved with the quest in the Stratholme human side, I believe, where you had to retrieve one of her paintings. So it's a neat item that unlocks a hidden little world here for you to explore. No longer obtainable since, you guessed it, Cataclysm. Freaking Deathwing. What a jerk. And since we're in the Plaguelands, let's talk about all of the Argent trinkets and doodads. If you played Classic, you'll probably remember the Argent Commission Trinket. This was pretty easy to get. You picked it up in the Plaguelands from an intro quest very quickly, and if you had it equipped, you could loot these items called Scourge Stones from high-level undead enemies. There are 3 tiers of these stones: the Minions, Invaders, and Corruptors. The Minions you got off of non-elite undead enemies throughout the game, and the Invaders off elites, either in the world or in dungeons, and the Corruptors from the dungeon bosses. These were all used for reputation with the Argent faction, so you'd always want to have this equipped when you were fighting undead. There also existed 2 blue version upgrades of this trinket that actually had stats, so you weren't neutering yourself. The Seal of the Dawn for melee, and the Ruin of the Dawn for casters. You got these from a short quest chain where you had to go into the Stratholme dungeon and first retrieve some plagued flesh samples, and then some data from these little boxes in the ziggurats. The quest is gone, but these boxes still remain to this day, sort of mystifying newer players. I also have these green items called Insignias of the Dawn and Crusade. These were patch 1.11 items that you earned through collecting undead monster parts or through turn-ins with trade skill professions, and you would use them to buy special armor and weapons from the Argent Dawn. You could get some nice blue gear, an 18-slot bag, which was pretty big at the time, and even some purples, which was handy. And another thing was that the higher reputation you had with them, the fewer amount of these tokens you needed to get all of this stuff, so you wanted to wait until you were exalted if you could. Both the quests to get the tokens and the actual gear are no longer available, but I have a few of these tokens just in case. Here's another classic right here. This is Egan's Blaster. Another old Eastern Plaguelands item here. It's actually a Ghostbuster reference. You got a quest from an NPC named Egan, located in the Terradale hub in the Plaguelands, and you were to take this item to the Stratholme dungeon human side and use it on the neutral ghosts wandering about. Now, this item was special because you actually equipped it, and back then, weapons worked a bit differently. Everyone had a melee weapon slot and a ranged weapon slot, and you could have both equipped at the same time, unlike today where it's one or the other. This item went into your actual range slot. There were a few classes back then who had this range slot, but they couldn't equip any ranged items at all. Off the top of my head, I think it was the Paladin, Druid, and Shaman. So back then, It was common for paladins, shamans, and druids to grab this quest, but never finish it, just to sort of fill that void so you can look at a fully equipped character screen. Kind of like an OCD thing, I think. And going over the last Plague Land / Argent item here, next we have the Argent Avenger, otherwise known as the Lightsaber. This was a reward after a 5-part quest chain for the Argent where you had to take out 3 bosses in the Stratham dungeon once more. The Archivist Galford, who was right before the final boss, Balnazar, and you needed his head for the next part, so you had to revisit this place immediately, which was annoying. And lastly, you needed the head of Baron Rivendare on the undead side. But once you finished that last part, you got this lightsaber as a reward out of 3 choices, the other 2 being a shield and a staff, but I mean, come on, who would choose anything other than the lightsaber? I remember even casters were running around with this thing, and I can't blame them. This specific saber isn't available anymore, but if you're an Alliance Gnome Warrior, you can get a copy of it from the Future of Gnomeregan quest. You do have to be a Gnome Warrior to get the quest, but it's transmoggable by anyone once you unlock it. And next up, we have the Bag of Marbles. I'm not sure if this is rare since you got this pretty easily back in the day, but it is no longer obtainable. You got it from a very low level quest reward in the starter zone, the Elune Forest, and similar to the Light of Elune, this is another super powerful item that I've held on to, waiting and waiting for the right moment to use it. It's kinda funny that one of the most powerful items in the game could be obtained from such a low level quest. Having trouble taking down this super powerful planet destroying titan? Just hit him with a bag of marbles. Problem solved. And next up, we have the Chromatic Carapace. I think I did this one in the Q&A, but I have this one on my Paladin, which was my first level 60 ever. You got this one from the old Upper Blackrock Spire raid. It was a 1% drop off of Gith, who was that chromatic dragon that she had to kill along with Rend Blackhand. I remember I got it in a pretty spectacular way too. It was in a pickup group back then, and we all rolled on it one by one, and some guy rolled a 99 and he started celebrating, and then I crushed his dreams right then and there and rolled a 100. I feel kind of bad about it, especially since I never did finish the quests, so guy, if you're watching this, it was on the Khadgar US server, and I think you were a hunter, but I'm sorry. Whew, that's a 14-year-old weight off of my shoulders. But this was actually used as a reagent for a purple piece of armor, either a mail or plate legs or a chest piece. Nearby Ren's room, you could find an injured whelp named Abi, and it would give you a quest to head to Winterspring, and from there, you did a couple of quests until you went to the undead Anderhal town in the Western Plaguelands, and you would turn in the Carapace along with other rare reagents to get your armor. All of this has been removed, so it of course has no use today, but a cool story behind it, I think. Alright, I think we'll call it an episode here. Dang, did I only cover 10 items? I talk too much. For future episodes, would you guys prefer I go into less detail per item so I can cover more per episode? Or do you prefer it this way where I ramble, but I'm pretty thorough? Let me know and I'll adjust the strategy for the next video if need be. Hopefully you found it interesting regardless though. I think I said this in the last one, but it's pretty fun to go over all of this stuff. It gives an actual use out of all of these items, and it makes me happy that I'm a bit of a pack rat. So I'll be sure to return to the next part soon. As always, I hope you found the video interesting or entertaining. Like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.